I never thought a single message could change my entire life. Yet, at 3:12 a.m., the phone on my nightstand vibrated, pulling me out of my restless sleep. I groggily reached for it, squinting against the sudden brightness of the screen in the darkness of my suburban New York apartment. A short message, brief, but enough to crush my chest. "The house is sold, the money's gone too. Good luck with your new life. Don't call me anymore, I'm changing my number. Ethan." I blinked, trying to make sure I wasn't imagining things. A numb sensation spread from my chest to my fingertips as I read the words again. No. This couldn't be real. After 15 years together, was this my husband's farewell? A cold, detached, almost triumphant text. "My name is Sophia Reynolds. I'm 42 years old, and I never thought I'd have to start over from nothing. But I also never thought the man I once loved would vanish, taking every penny with him and leaving me with absolutely nothing. Still, if Ethan thought I would sit back and cry, accepting my fate, he was wrong. I set my phone down on the nightstand and took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Hurt, anger and panic clashed inside me, but I knew I couldn't let emotions take over. If there was one thing life had taught me, it was this. Whenever someone tried to back me into a corner, I would find a way forward, and I would walk stronger than ever. I had suspected Ethan for a long time. It started about a year ago when he suddenly became interested in working out. After over a decade of ignoring my advice about staying healthy, Ethan was suddenly spending hours at an expensive gym in downtown Manhattan. 3 times a week, then 5. And then, she appeared. Amber, 27 years old, a personal trainer, with a sculpted body and a smile that made it seem like the world belonged to her. I wasn't naive. I had seen middle-aged men bored with their marriages seek excitement in the arms of younger women. But what made me wary wasn't their affair, it was the suspicious financial changes. Everything became clearer when I noticed Ethan constantly changing the passwords to our bank accounts, withdrawing large sums of money without warning, and conveniently scheduling work trips that matched the locations Amber posted on Instagram. But the real red flag was when I accidentally found an unsent email in Ethan's drafts. An exchange with a real estate agent about selling our vacation home in Florida. That house wasn't just our shared asset, it was my family's legacy. I didn't confront Ethan immediately. I'm not the type to pick a fight without solid proof. As a financial executive, I built my career on observation, analysis, and strategic planning. So instead, I chose to gather evidence. I met with Rebecca, a divorce attorney specializing in financial fraud, and she told me exactly how to protect myself. Track every transaction, she advised. If he's committing financial fraud, we need enough proof to stop him. And that's exactly what I did. I hired a forensic accountant to trace Ethan's transactions. I made copies of every financial document, from bank statements to property deeds. When I discovered that Ethan was secretly funneling money into a private account and planning to sell the house without my consent, I knew I couldn't sit still any longer. 3 weeks ago, I filed for an emergency asset protection order with the court. All our joint accounts were frozen, every suspicious transaction was flagged, and the house sale was blocked before Ethan could finalize it. And now here I was, sitting in the dark, staring at his text, knowing that the game was over. Not for me, but for Ethan. I picked up my phone and typed a single reply. "Check your account." I could picture him, lying in some luxury resort with Amber, believing he had successfully abandoned me without leaving a trace. But in just a few minutes, when he opened his banking app and saw his accounts frozen, I wondered if he'd still be smiling. The clock on my nightstand read 3:27 a.m. I remained seated, gripping my phone, staring at the screen as if waiting for a miracle. But I knew Ethan wouldn't reply right away, he was too confident. Ethan had always believed he was smarter than everyone else. He wouldn't check his accounts immediately, he would assume his plan was flawless, that I would wake up in the morning, realize I had lost everything, and desperately beg for help. But Ethan had underestimated me. I stood up, walked out of my bedroom, forcing myself to steady my breath. My apartment was silent, the only light coming from the city skyline through the large windows. I poured myself a glass of water, drinking slowly. If I had spent the night thinking about this, then Ethan would have to endure a sleepless night too. I picked up my phone, opened a folder on my laptop. A file labeled, Ethan, Documents. Inside, every piece of evidence I had gathered over the past 6 months. Everything had started with the smallest changes. Ethan had never been the type to enjoy exercising. Throughout our 15 years together, he had always ignored my suggestions to get regular health checkups, using work as an excuse. But suddenly he signed up for a premium gym membership in Manhattan. At first it was 3 sessions a week, then gradually 5. I tried to believe that maybe he was just trying to improve himself, but then I started noticing unusual spending habits. Over $2,000 a month on gym expenses, personal training sessions with Amber, extravagant dinners that had never appeared on our shared expenses before. I'm not a naturally suspicious person, but as a financial executive, I know how to read a bank statement, and I know when something doesn't add up. Then came the suspicious business trips. Ethan started taking these sudden trips to Los Angeles, Miami, coincidentally the same locations that appeared in Amber's vacation photos on Instagram. And finally, the biggest shock of all, I discovered his secret bank account. I spent weeks tracking his transactions, hiring a forensic accountant to investigate. What we uncovered was damning. Ethan had secretly transferred over $400,000 from our joint accounts into an account under his name, withdrawing small amounts at a time to avoid detection. But what enraged me the most was the unsent email I found in his drafts. An exchange discussing the sale of our Florida vacation home without my consent, a house that had been in my family for 3 generations. That was when I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I met with my lawyer, Rebecca Caldwell, and she walked me through the steps to protect myself. I gathered all the necessary evidence and filed a court order to freeze our shared assets, just in time, before Ethan could take the final step in his plan. And now, as I sat in my apartment at nearly 4 a.m., I knew Ethan was about to realize he had lost everything. My phone rang. I looked down at the screen. Ethan. I let it ring 4 times, taking a deep breath before answering. Sophia, what the hell did you do? His voice was filled with rage and panic. Good morning, Ethan. I kept my tone calm, cold. Have you checked your account? Where's the money gone? What did you do? I let out a quiet chuckle. It's not what I did, Ethan. It's what the court did. Did you really think I would just let you take all our money without doing anything? Silence. A few seconds passed, as if he was trying to process everything. I'll sue you, Ethan spat. You have no right. I have all the evidence, Ethan. I have the bank statements, the forensic accountant's records, your emails, discussing the house sale without my consent. I paused, then spoke slowly, emphasizing each word. I also have a recorded call between you and Amber, where you said I would never find out. A long silence. I could almost hear him swallow hard. I don't have time to argue with you, I continued. The court has everything they need. The asset protection order is in effect, and I suggest you find a good lawyer soon. Ethan tried to compose himself. Sophia, listen to me. We can talk. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. No, Ethan, this wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. And you're only mad because it didn't work. I heard a voice in the background. Embers, sounding worried, urging Ethan to do something. Oh, I said slowly. It sounds like Amber just realized her Bali dream is over. Ethan cursed under his breath. I didn't need to hear anything else. Good luck, Ethan, I said before hanging up. I placed my phone on the table and looked out the window. The city lights still burned brightly against the night sky, indifferent to Ethan's chaos. I was no longer the victim. I was the one who won. I stood up, poured myself a hot cup of tea, and walked to my desk. Opening the folder labeled Ethan Documents, I skimmed through the carefully compiled evidence I had gathered over the past 6 months. Everything was airtight. Every suspicious withdrawal, every shady transaction, every recorded conversation of Ethan smugly planning to leave me with nothing. He thought he had won. He thought I would crumble. But in reality, he had underestimated me. I opened my email and sent copies of all the documents to Rebecca Caldwell, my lawyer. She had scheduled a meeting with me on Monday morning to prepare for the next steps in the lawsuit. But I didn't need to wait until then to know that everything was already falling into place. Just as I took my first sip of tea, my phone buzzed with a new message. "Did you freeze all the money? You have no right. That's our money." I laughed. Just as I expected, Ethan had finally checked his accounts and realized everything was frozen under the Emergency Asset Protection Order. I set my phone down, ignoring the message. A minute later, it buzzed again. Another call from Ethan. I let it ring, savoring every second of his panic. I knew he wouldn't give up easily. He would try to negotiate, try to threaten me, maybe even beg. But I was no longer the woman who believed his promises. After 7 missed calls, Ethan finally gave up. I closed my eyes and let out a breath, my shoulders relaxing. I was in control now. The next morning, I arrived at Rebecca's law office, where she was already prepared with a thick stack of legal documents. "You did an excellent job, Sophia," Rebecca said, sliding a new set of papers toward me. "Ethan tried to make several financial transactions last night, but since the court order was in effect, every single one was denied." I nodded, a deep sense of satisfaction settling within me. "We're going to maintain this order until the divorce proceedings," she continued. "I also had our forensic accountant dig deeper. They uncovered another hidden bank account Ethan was trying to keep secret. He transferred over $250,000 into it over the past 6 months. I clenched my fists, trying to stay composed. "So he didn't just want to leave me, he wanted to make sure I had absolutely nothing?" I said, my voice icy. Rebecca sighed. "Exactly. But thanks to your preparation, the court was able to intervene in time. We're adding all of this to the divorce case, not just to protect your assets, but to make sure Ethan is held accountable." I nodded. "I'm not letting him get away with this. Not again." Rebecca smiled. "And he won't be able to. Today, I'm filing a motion to keep all financial assets frozen until the divorce is finalized. That means Ethan won't be able to touch a single dollar he tried to hide." I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. After months of stress and vigilance, I could finally feel a small sense of security. But I knew the battle wasn't over. When I got home, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from an unfamiliar address. "Sophia, I need to talk to you. I didn't know the full truth about Ethan until it was too late. I'm truly sorry. Ember." I stared at the screen, feeling a slow burn of anger rise inside me. Ember, the woman who had enabled Ethan all this time, the one who had helped him plan to abandon me, now she wanted to talk? Should I respond? Ember might just be trying to save herself, attempting to shift blame. But she also might know something I didn't. After a moment of hesitation, I decided to forward the email to Rebecca. Ember could be another pawn in Ethan's game. But I didn't trust her. My phone buzzed again, this time with a notification from my banking app, an attempted login from a foreign IP, immediately blocked. I laughed. Ethan still wasn't giving up. Did he really think he could escape this without consequences? Raw. I set my phone down and looked out the window. The New York sky was gray, but I knew the real storm hadn't hit yet. I was ready for it. And when it came, I would be the one still standing. I sat at my desk, eyes fixed on Amber's email. The words seemed remorseful, but I wasn't so easily fooled. She knew exactly what kind of man Ethan was. She had been there, scheming with him to destroy me. So why now? Why reach out? My phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca, my lawyer. "Do not respond to Amber, I'll handle it. If she has anything useful, we'll get it the right way." I nodded to myself, knowing I had placed my trust in the right person. Rebecca was always 2 steps ahead of Ethan. That was why he couldn't beat me in this game. I stood up, taking a deep breath. The fight wasn't over. Ethan had lost control of our assets, but he hadn't given up. I knew him, he hated losing, and when backed into a corner, he would only get more reckless. The next morning I woke up with an unsettling feeling, a strange sense of unease settling in my chest. I checked my phone and wasn't surprised to see a missed call from Ethan at 3:42 a.m. This time, I didn't ignore it. I opened my voicemail and pressed play. "Sophia?" "It's me." His voice was rough, tired. "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Do you really want to destroy me? Did 15 years of marriage mean nothing to you? I gripped my phone tightly. 15 years of marriage, and this was how he ended it, with a midnight text, robbing me of everything? I know I was wrong, I let Amber blind me, but she's gone now. Can you forgive me? Can we settle this without the courts? I almost laughed. Forgive him, settle outside of court? After he had tried to leave me penniless? I deleted the voicemail without replying. Ethan was desperate, and that only meant I was winning. An hour later, I was sitting across from Rebecca in her office. A thick stack of documents was already waiting on her desk. I just got the latest report from the forensic accountant, she said, sliding the file toward me. Ethan attempted multiple logins to his accounts overnight. He even tried changing the recovery email, but the system blocked every attempt. I nodded. He also left me a voicemail. He's pretending to be remorseful. Rebecca smirked. You're not the first woman to experience this kind of emotional manipulation. Men like Ethan, when they lose control, will try every trick to get it back. She paused before adding, but the good news is, we have the upper hand. I just filed a motion for the court to grant you sole financial control until the divorce is finalized. Ethan won't be able to touch any assets without court approval. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was finally regaining control of my life. When I got home, my phone rang again. This time it wasn't Ethan, it was my son, Lucas. Hey, sweetheart, I answered, trying to keep my voice calm. Mom, something weird just happened. Lucas's voice was tense. Dad just called me. He said you're trying to ruin him. He told me to call you and convince you to stop the legal process. I closed my eyes, fury simmering beneath the surface. Ethan had the audacity to drag Lucas into this? You don't have to worry about this, Lucas, I said, keeping my tone steady. I know exactly what your father is doing. Everything I'm doing is to protect our family. Lucas was silent for a moment before he finally said, Mum, are you sure you're okay? I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. I'm okay, sweetheart. And this time I'm not letting anyone destroy me. That evening, an email from Ethan's lawyer landed in my inbox. Dear Miss Reynolds, my client, Mr. Ethan Reynolds, would like to arrange a pre-trial meeting to discuss a potential settlement. He is willing to negotiate in order to reduce tensions between both parties. Please let us know a suitable time for this discussion. I didn't need to read it twice to understand how desperate Ethan had become. I picked up my phone and sent a text to Rebecca. Ethan wants a settlement meeting, should we consider it? Her reply came almost instantly. Absolutely not. He's trying to regain control. We'll meet him, but only in court. I nodded to myself, knowing this was the right decision. Ethan could beg, negotiate, or even plead, but the truth was, he had already lost. I set my phone down and looked out the window. The city lights still burned brightly, but this time, I didn't feel alone. I had once been a woman betrayed. Now, I was a woman who refused to be broken. But now, I am a woman who controls her own destiny. The day of the trial, I put on my deep blue blazer, the color of confidence, of strength. Today was not a day for fear. Today was the day I reclaimed my life. As I stepped into the courtroom, Ethan was already there, looking more disheveled than I had ever seen him. His face was gaunt, his hair unkempt. Gone was the powerful, confident man I once knew. He lowered his head when he saw me. But I didn't care. Rebecca walked up beside me, placing her hand on the thick file of evidence. Are you ready? I took a deep breath, more than ever. The judge began the hearing, reviewing all the documents and evidence I had gathered. They examined every suspicious transaction, every email, every recorded conversation, every attempt Ethan made to withdraw money from our joint accounts, even after they had been frozen. Ethan tried to defend himself, playing the role of a tempted man, a lost soul. He claimed that Amber had manipulated him, that he had been swept up in a fantasy he never intended to pursue. But I knew the truth. He didn't regret hurting me, he only regretted getting caught. The judge adjusted their glasses and delivered the final ruling. The court finds undeniable evidence that the defendant intentionally concealed marital assets, violated court orders, and attempted to abandon the plaintiff without legal financial support. Therefore, the court rules as follows. The plaintiff, Mrs. Sophia Reynolds, is granted full ownership of the Florida vacation home. 75% of all marital assets will be awarded to Mrs. Reynolds. The defendant, Mr. Ethan Reynolds, is responsible for covering all of the plaintiff's legal fees. Due to the defendant's attempts to evade financial responsibility, the court will freeze his passport until all payments are fulfilled. I closed my eyes, letting relief wash over me. I had won. Ethan sat in stunned silence. He turned to me, his face pleading. "Sophia, can we talk?" I met his eyes for the first time in months. But in that moment, I didn't see a husband. I saw a con man who had been exposed. I smiled faintly. "Ethan, you had your chance to talk to me. But instead, you sent me a text saying, 'Good luck with your new life,' so now, good luck with yours." I stood up and walked out of the courtroom, feeling lighter than I had in years. 6 months later, I sat on the porch of my Florida vacation home, a glass of wine in hand, gazing out at the ocean. Everything here belonged to me now. Lucas stepped outside, phone in hand. "Mom, Uncle Michael just called. Dad finally found a small apartment in the suburbs." I simply nodded. No joy, no bitterness, just another piece of news. Lucas hesitated. "Are you okay?" I turned to him, smiling. "Better than ever, sweetheart." I didn't need to know what Ethan was doing or where Amber had gone. I didn't need revenge. I had everything I needed. My life, on my terms. 1 year later, I stood on stage at a financial empowerment seminar, speaking to a room full of women. The topic? Protecting your finances after divorce. I shared my story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Preparing yourself isn't paranoia, gathering evidence isn't betrayal, it's how you protect yourself. As I stepped off stage, an older woman grasped my hand. "Thank you, Sophia. Because of you, I knew how to protect myself, before it was too late." I squeezed her hand and smiled. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to live better. And I had. The biggest lesson. The takeaway from this story is clear. Always be prepared and protect yourself. Especially when it comes to financial and legal matters. No one wants to believe that the person they trust most could betray them, but reality proves that it happens. Preparation isn't suspicion, it's self-preservation. Track your finances. Keep important records. Seek professional help when needed. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment. Act with clarity and strategy. And finally, instead of seeking revenge, focus on rebuilding your life and reclaiming your power. What do you think of this story? Have you ever experienced a similar situation, or do you have any lessons to share? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow this channel for more real-life stories about life, family, and valuable lessons.